the future. Whether we realize it or not, we're becoming more closely aligned to high-level hospital infectious disease cleaning professionals and biotechnology decontamination professionals, period. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Because those are the two, that's what the world knows right now. That's the SpaceX of decontaminating microbial contamination. It's both of those two. One doesn't supersede the other. In combination, you will get the cleanest environment there is, period, if done properly.
Hey, Skip, I have a question here from one of our viewers tonight, and I want to put it out there to you and Doug. I'm comfortable with my own answer on this, and I want to remind you we only have a little bit before the top of the hour, because I know this will go on for a long time. But here's the question. If a property insurance company will pay for a mold inspection and testing for an affected property, then why won't a health insurance company pay for a mold inspection and testing to evaluate someone if their home is killing them? I'm sure we could do an easy hour on that, but I think the short answer is that they're staying in their lane, they're avoiding knowing, so they have to deal with the issue?
Well, here's my personal opinion on this. Mr. President, I look forward to your response. If the EPA, which we already know, their base study said 85% of the buildings in this country have IEQ contamination. 50% had signs of water damage at the time of the assessment, and over 50% of them are contaminated. How much is that going to cost to fix? That's if that isn't the definition of Pandora's box. And then there's another reason why the EPA, CDC, NIH aren't telling people why these are unhealthy, because the magnitude of the problem exceeds the amount of money we have. So we have to be very systematic right now. We have to go about this very specifically. It's not a shotgun approach. We have to, and this is why Normie has the ability to get people to start thinking differently about how are they going to cover this from an insurance standpoint, and can we get these regulatory agencies to start saying, here's why it's unhealthy, and here's how we're going to fix it. Mr. President.
So I'll just say, I think the interesting thing about this is it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. It's about informing people that they have to deal with the cause, not the symptom. And unfortunately, our society often they just don't know how to exist without insurance. They expect insurance to pay for the symptom, for the problem, rather than looking at the cause and saying, look, how can I keep an environment dry? How can I make sure, using IEQ management, that my home will never get to a situation where it's water damaged? Or if it is water damaged, how do I fix it so I'm not going to have a problem forever? You know, one of the interesting things you said that I just want to underscore, Skip, and great job, by the way. Love this. This is really what we need to talk about. But probably a lot of people in the room tonight heard terms that they've not been familiar with, actinos, endotoxins, biotoxins. And what you did was you laid out, I think, a beautiful picture of the whole microbial contamination issue, much, 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 much bigger than mold. And that's the kind of thing we talk about in the NCRSI class. And I wish, you know, in a perfect world, if I were running the world, all of our Normie members would take that class so that they would understand how to utilize EnviroBiomics and Respirari and blah, 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 and at least be familiar with it. Because as you said, and I think you're exactly correct, you used the word intervention. I'm just going to put a different term on that. But the traditional remediation processes just are not effective for the majority of the people. And we've got to learn how to do our jobs better. I'm just saying.
Well, there's no, and in order to do so, you have to understand what is it that you're trying to solve. And that's this type of information, which you don't have to be Einstein to have a working comprehensive knowledge of what this means, right? The other thing is, if we are and should, not necessarily tomorrow, but we're migrating towards this industry is going to be more closely aligned to hospital infectious disease decontamination cleaning, biotechnology, environmental decontamination. Then if you go to the doctor, first thing you do is put the blood pressure cuff on you. That's why I said this, that example of that spore trap sample, that's my blood pressure cuff, because I can see what's there. It measures 100% of the slide, and pictorially, I can present this. Nathan, this is what you're breathing.
Yeah.
And holy cow. So that's my blood pressure. So I'm using analogies. Secondly, if I see that, I can go, you know what? This is telling me I need to take an X-ray. And what is that X-ray going to be? Envirobionics. I want to do a bacterial and endotoxin and actino test in here. And by the way, guess what? They've already said the doctor wants that. And they've already said the doctor wants an ERMI. And the doctor said they want a Hertz Me too. So if the doctors are saying this, and this is what we're going at here, this is a collaboration between the patient, the doctor, the HVAC company, which I haven't even gotten into today. We stand on, but guess what? The normie trained professional, and if you go through this NCRSI, NCMP class, you're positioning yourself within the market that you're operating on, regardless of what you're doing, is to being the subject matter expert. And every single market all over the world needs somebody who understands this stuff, because the people that are affected are looking for hope. They want hope that they can talk to somebody and get the right information. And when people call us, they go, that's the closest thing I've gotten to what my doctor is telling me I got to deal with. I call all these other companies, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And I'll tell you what, I'm new to normie. I couldn't tell you, I got to raise the biggest normie flag I can find on the planet, because this is the knowledge entity. This is going to teach people in the masses about what this really is and what the source is, and solve the problem and not put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
We are at the top of the hour, but I do have one comment I want to repeat from somebody in the room, and then we have a hand raised for another question. But real quick, Skip, the question I asked you earlier that you responded to, one of our members kind of responded at the same time, and they responded in a way that you physically can't. They did it in 5 words. Follow the money, big pharma.
I saw that pop up on the screen. Yeah. And guess what?
And Randall's in the room, and I'm going to open up his mic here. You had a question for us. Go ahead, Randall.
Thank you.
There you go.
Great stuff. Yes, go ahead.
Well, let me just say this again, just to balance that off. Big pharma exists because we want the drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a confirmation happening tomorrow, perhaps. We'll see. Might make a difference.
Yes.
So my question was, but I'll make a quick comment. You talked about the client, patient, not patient for us, but the client can't see things. I will, we've already talked, some of us have already talked a little bit about the Immunolytics gravity plate concept. That my job with that, when I was talking with friends, family, and neighbors, is, hey, it's not as bad as you think. Many times it looks worse. They can see that. And now you have to help interpret what is a concern and what is not, based on what the criteria that's been developed over decades of several doctors analyzing the data. It's very visually powerful, and it's really critical to not overstate it, because people can easily jump to, oh no, this looks horrible, when it's not. And so on, but sometimes it is horrible. But my question is on the treatments, and I think you kind of touched on this, like you say, with the sanitization protocol. The things I've seen, mold spores tend to be one of the hardest things to kill. The bacteria, viruses, and lots of other stuff tend to get done earlier. So we're already focusing on the technologies and methods that will kill the stuff we haven't tested for. If we just test for some of the, we don't have to test for everything on that list, and we're still using technologies that will cleanse a whole bunch of it. But then I'm going to add some things I've heard that I'm using. I've heard, and I need to research further, that they may neutralize mycotoxins, some citrus-based things and some other things to some degree on the more powerful things. That seems like a path of us pursuing what methods can go after the whole ball of wax, even if you haven't tested for the whole ball of wax, or more of the ball of wax, I should say, that will help neutralize more of the things in the environment, even if you went after the most obvious ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I'm not hearing that you're saying there's a silver bullet out there, but there's
Right.
right. I get that. Well, mycotoxins are different, and microscopic maple syrup, right? They can be aerosolized, they're attached, they're sticky, they stick to surfaces. I haven't seen anything yet that's been in a reproducible way with statistical relevancy that says XYZ process solves the problem. What we do know from the hospital infectious disease decontamination cleaning is that it's multi-step, and it involves a couple of things. First and foremost, if you're not cleaning biofilms off of surfaces, you are not going to destroy the microorganisms that are growing in it. So you have to clean first in order to remove the biofilms before you even disinfect and decontaminate and sanitize. There's a very specific process. Again, I defer back to hospital infectious disease cleaning, and what I'm referring to is the difference between cleaning, sanitization, and sterilization. That's a 99.9, 99.99, 99.999 log reduction. But you can't disinfect if you haven't cleaned first, because you're not going to get those reductions. And I can prove that every which way from Sunday with an ATP monitor. So I think that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just got to see how other people do it that have been tried and true for a very long time. Every time you go into an operating room, or you know somebody that's gone into an operating room, that has been high-level decontamination, disinfecting, cleaning. And it does a good job, but it's manual cleaning isn't the only thing that gets you 100%. It can't. Human error.
Hey, Skip.
Can I?
Hey, Doug.
I'm sorry. Let me just add something, if I can, about testing. And Randy, I think this is to your point. We are so much further ahead of the game than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, which is just exciting to me about where we're headed. And some of the things that we're going to be learning and finding out about how to deal with mycotoxins is really, I think, on the horizon, pretty close to us. But I can tell you, when I started selling air purifiers in 1996, I knew that ozone killed mold. We didn't have testing for it, but anecdotally, you could see it. You could put an ozone machine in a place where there was visible mold growing on the wall, and it would turn to powder, and you could wipe it off the wall. But then came testing, which was really interesting, not only on ozone, but on PCO technology, on ionization, on the DBI. All of a sudden, they were able to prove clinically and in field studies that it was dealing with Stachybotrys, which is one of the hardest molds to actually eliminate. There was actually we found that testing was done on methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, one of the hardest bacteria to kill. And so what I'm saying is we're moving in the right direction. Hang on. Eventually, the science is going to be there. And that's why it's so important for us to be constantly learning and staying in touch with, just as Skip has done tonight, looking at the studies, looking at clinical studies, looking at field studies, doing case studies. All of that is so important, because we can only know what we know, but we're learning more and more every single day. And that's just an exciting place to be.
You know, I want to quote Gavin real quick, Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, because he said it numerous times: follow the science.
Yes.
And that's where we're really heading right now. And truthfully, and it's something that you just said, Doug, that just keyed something in my mind. You said about, killing different organisms. It's easy to kill the organisms, but you have to do it in a way where you don't kill the host, if it's a person infected by it, or create an environment that's so toxic people can't go into it. The whole concept of use bleach because it kills Ebola. Oh, if it kills Ebola, it'll take care of everything. Ebola is described as a wimpy virus or bacteria or whatever it is, because it's easy to kill. But when you're dealing with envelope, non-envelope, positive, negative gram bacteria, what scares the scientists the most are spores.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing for them to deal with. And that's
C. diff.
what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are technologies out there. There are chemicals that that do eradicate all of it. Period. There are sporicidals out there that, by virtue of their definition, as for example, cold sterilants. I'm not going to go down that. By virtue of the definition, U.S. Pharmacopoeia 1072, a sterilant is an agent that destroys all forms of microbial life and their spores in either its liquid or vapor format. But the problem is, right, endotoxins are a fragment of that bacterial wall. And if you kill it and you leave it in the environment, we all know now, after today, everybody's smarter, because I did a great job tonight showing that if it was on the surface, it got in the air, it goes back on the floor, you walk past the floor, it goes back and you breathe it, you've left a contaminant in there. That's why this is so difficult. It is very meticulous. It has to be done in a certain way. You can't go in there with a rag and just wipe stuff off. It has to be methodical, meticulous, and technique dependent. Anyway.
So Doug, how do we raise his enthusiasm? How do we get him more engaged in this discussion?
One of the things I
Yeah,
love
you
about
did a great
Skip,
job.
he shares our passion, and I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity that we have to change the lives of millions of people by creating cleaner, safer, healthier environments. I just wish more of our Normie members would get on board and get beyond the basic class and start taking some advanced classes. It's not about money as much as it is about education and staying up with the science. Because if you don't, you'll be left behind, right, Skip?
Yeah, you're already it's already past you. If for those of you out there that have witnessed some of this tonight, if you elect not to do this, somebody in your market is going to know this.
Yeah.
And you are going to be replaced. This is where it's going.
Yeah.
Doug, I talked right before I knew who Mr. President was. I've been talking about this in my marketplace for 5 years. People thought I was nuts. They thought I was crazy. Custer, I have more arrows in my back than you can possibly imagine. Guess what? We're here now.
Yeah.
5 years.
That's right. We are.
If you don't know this stuff, not to recite it verbatim, but to have a comfortable working understanding of the complexities of the contaminants in a water damaged building or structure, somebody in your marketplace is going to know it, and they're going to be the go-to.
Well, what you did tonight, Skip, was help take the people here in this room or anybody else that's watching this past the I've witnessed the bee sting and see a reaction.
Yeah.
Now they know there's other things they can't see causing the same type of reaction.
Yeah, I know we've gone really long. Let me just leave it at this. When I share what I just talked about tonight to people who say, I'm so sick, and then after we do the sanitization protocol in its entirety, if it was a remediation, we did that appropriately, but we left the house in as microbially decontaminated state as we possibly could, they go, I feel so much better. And I say, do you want to know why? Because here's all the testing. And you know what they say? No, I don't need to know why. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Some of them do, but that's it. I mean,
Right.
we're a hell of a lot more aligned. Hospital infectious disease, biotechnology, than we ever possibly could have imagined. And it all
Absolutely.
started with what Normie started 20 years ago, almost 21 years ago.
Skip, thank you again. Doug, anything else?
Thanks, Skip. Great job, man.
Okay, everybody. One more time. I am back here live at the Experience Trade Show again, and I have Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner with us from GBAC and ISSA. I think it's the easiest way to describe it.
We've got a lot of acronyms there.
Yes, we do. Yes, lots of initials. Hey, one of the things I really want to tell you most about this interview is I get to stop for a few minutes. We have been talking to so many people today and doing so many things. It's been a very, very busy show the last 2 days.
The energy level at the Experience here in Las Vegas has just been amazing. But the the people that have come here looking for ways to improve, people who have come here with looking for solutions, people are looking for collaboration. I was just in a conversation a minute ago where someone said, well, I tried this, it didn't work the way I was expected. And someone else in the audience went, oh, I do it this way. And suddenly you've got this translation, this sharing of information that's going to improve our industry and improve their businesses because they came to the experience. It's just phenomenal.
Well, you know, you did a talk this morning and it was a newer concept that a lot of people are familiar with. And that's all I've been getting all day long. People coming up to say, hey, you were in the interview. What was that he was talking about? Do you have any information? I said, no, you're going to talk to Gavin yourself. You know, let him explain this and get a training course on it.
I think what we're talking about, Lance, is really radical. It's radical in a way that if people can understand that harmful, detrimental germs like bacteria, mold, yeast, don't live in isolation. They live in cities of microorganisms. They live in communities. And those cities of microorganisms are called biofilms. But our whole approach to remediation, restoration, cleaning has been one bacteria at a time. The way that we look at our cleaning products and our disinfectants, where we should be more focused on how does a community of bacteria survive on a surface? How do they help each other? And how does that make our job more challenging? And what processes and products and tools and equipment do we use to create a healthier and safe environment? But more importantly, show it by data, show it by information.
You know, one of the conversations I had with somebody after your talk was they were asking about, well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, about seeing a bacteria in a city. And I said, well, look at it this way. Your eyes aren't good enough to see a bacteria. When you see something growing there, that's a city of bacteria.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is really important that bacteria will grow on surfaces and it's colorless, it's invisible, and there might be 3 to 4 cell layers thick, and we won't see that. But in a biofilm, the different types of bacteria work together and they produce a protective covering. So it's a little bit like a building with scaffolding all around the building, but the scaffolding is solid. It's all filled in and it protects the inside of the building. So imagine that these bacteria do this protective covering. It's called EPS. And that protects the bacteria inside, which makes it more challenging, more difficult for the disinfectant or the clean product to actually get into those into the harmful bacteria and kill them. And we find that because we're not focusing on that, we tend to go back and go, oh, I removed this, or I thought I cleaned it, but now the problem's even worse, or it came back. And so we've got to actually change our processes, look at it, revisit our products and tools, and look at this more as we are dealing with cities of microorganisms, not just 1 or 2.
Well, you had mentioned this morning something that really I found astounding, that some of the things that we use to treat the biological contaminants, the bacteria in this case, kill the bacteria, but it gets replaced by a different type of bacteria that could be worse.
Yeah, so there's people like Greg Whiteley in Australia, Stephanie Dancer in Scotland, who've been researching biofilms for years. And I want to emphasize biofilms exist, been known in so many other industries. We'll take all those lessons learned from other industries and we'll bring them into our industry. Mm-hmm. But the importance is that with this protective layer, when you remove, say, use a disinfectant, research has shown if you remove harmful bacteria with a disinfectant, then when they come back, it's more likely to get more harmful bacteria. If you use a probiotic product, or if you use an enzyme cleaner, or even if you just use soap and water like just a detergent, we find that when you remove the harmful bacteria, non-harmful, so environmental bacteria come in and take over that space. So it means that, yes, you've still got bacteria on the surface, but they're beneficial bacteria. They're environmental bacteria that are not harmful.
It's like within your digestive system, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria.
Correct.
And you need the good bacteria.
Yeah, and we need to appreciate from our industry that there is good bacteria. So we see biofilms being used for waste management. We see biofilms being used in the food production industry, all for good purposes.
Septic systems.
Correct.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned about the scaffolding around protecting the bacteria. Is that like positive and negative gram bacteria, or is that something in addition to what you're talking about?
Yeah, so there is that definition between the different types of bacteria. What we find in a biofilm, we can get lots of different species of bacteria. We can find that there is certain species like a bacillus, which secretes like a protein, a polysaccharide, a peptide, different products that then protect Staphylococcus aureus. And we know that Staphylococcus aureus causes skin infections, for example.
MRSA you're talking about.
Yeah. So drug resistant type Staph aureus. But what we're finding through research, and we've known this for a while, that some bacteria work together with Staphylococcus aureus and protect it. And so we have to understand that when we pick up a cleaning product or a disinfectant, and we always say, read the label, and it says effective against one bacteria. In the real world, that's not real.
Right.
In the real world, those bacteria are living as a colony, as a biofilm. And so we want to help work with our manufacturers to start producing product that actually works on this city of microorganisms.
Do they use anything like an antibiotic to treat these biofilms?
That's a great question. So a lot of the drug-resistant germs that we see in hospitals have led through antibiotic use, even cleaning product use. And so biofilms actually lead to being resistant, making the antibiotics less effective. So it's really important as we try to target, what areas do we target? As we target the cell wall, for example, as we target the replication, multiplication, growth areas of the bacteria. So it's really important that a lot of people who work in, say, hospitals understand this. A lot of people that work in the food industry understand this. Those that work maybe in the nuclear industry, we get biofilms, pipes, the plumbers, you see biofilms build up on pipes. They understand that there is ways of removing those bacteria. But even in the medical world, we understand that biofilms can lead to greater antibiotic resistance, and that's a big problem.
So with this removal, like you're talking about pipes, if you remove that sludge that's in there, what do you do with it not to contaminate something else?
Yeah, great question, Lance. So let's go back to our definition of cleaning. And everyone's got to be clear on this. It's what makes us professional, what makes us essential as an industry is that we know how to remove. So cleaning is the process of removing. The next step in that process is disposing of what you've just removed in a way that's safe. And that's what makes us professional, where other people might remove it and don't know how to dispose of it. So yeah, when you get buildup of a biofilm in a pipe on a surface, yes, we've got to remove it, but we've also got to know how to dispose of it safely.
Is there any regulations on that, like there is on asbestos and lead, that you can't just throw it out or send it to a dump?
It's a good question. I work a lot in high consequence diseases. So if I'm dealing with an Ebola outbreak, yes, there are rules. There are regulations. There are requirements of what we can do and can't do with Ebola waste, with Ebola vomit and diarrhea as we clean that up. Yes. So we have to, so it's really important. Are those rules well known? I don't think they are. I think this is an opportunity for education, awareness, and training to help people be more professional.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned septic systems earlier, there's all kinds of bacteria down there growing, and it's going into the ground. It can seep into well water and stuff like that. Is that a concern when you try to clean these systems out?
Yeah, it is. It is. So we know that the chemicals we use, we know the germs that we're removing can actually, if we don't do this properly, can get into other systems. And so it's so important. We know that within our industry, cross-contamination is a big issue.
Yeah.
We can use the same cleaning cloth, whether it be a microfiber or a cotton rag or a mop, and if we don't use it properly, we can spread it to other rooms. And one of the big cases that I investigated a few years ago was a norovirus outbreak in a hotel, and it affected 350 people got sick at 9 different events over a 30-day period. And what was the problem? A dirty vacuum cleaner.
Spreading it from one place to another.
Every day. And that kept the outbreak going. And that was a norovirus outbreak.
Amazing. Well, it was educational, and everybody left talking about that presentation this morning. is looking at the industry differently, shaking it up, definitely.
I think you're right, Lance, and it's what we're trying to do is trying to create opportunities. And so I talked a lot about how clean is a locker room, and how does the indoor air quality in a locker room, as well as what's on the surfaces, how dirty the surfaces are, or how clean the surfaces are, and how does that affect performance of athletes? And that's known. There's been science, there's been research done on that. And then how do we, here in our industry, work with the professional athletes, college athletes, high school athletes, to ensure that we get them at their peak performance, because we, again, focus on cleaning for health, but we focus on indoor air quality as well as surfaces.
So I can see the professional gambling industry getting involved in the health of the athletes' indoor air quality.
Yeah, really important, Lance. There's a couple of studies out there that we know that have, they've been looked at Major League Baseball pitchers, quarterbacks from the NFL, and how that the quality of the air in the locker room, in their environment, actually affects their reaction rates, for example. That's known. I was working with a professional football team just recently, and I was talking to the coaches and the players about injuries. And they said, oh, yeah, we get cuts, abrasions, and they don't heal. And I said, well, that's a biofilm problem. The biofilm was formed on that burn, that injury on your leg, and it doesn't heal. And there's been some well-published articles where football players have taken months, even years to heal. And what it was interesting, they thought it was the playing field, and went, no, it's not. It might be, but what more importantly, it's this environment here in the locker room, the gymnasium, the hot tub, the cold tub that keeps reinfecting, that keeps that infection cycle going.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing stuff.
Which I hope is opportunities. I hope people can see this as, if we start doing what other industries are doing when it comes to biofilm. So like the food industry, dairy farms, if you start looking at biofilm in the way they have those conversations in hospitals, for example, on medical equipment, if we take those lessons learned, apply them to our industry, and put that in a way that, yes, we can increase performance of professional athletes, we can create safer and healthier indoor spaces, because we understand how microorganisms, how germs live in the environment.
So slightly off topic, when you deal with mold, does that exist in the same biofilm environment as bacteria?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yeah. So I want to emphasize biofilms can occur in both wet or moist environments, but also dry environments. And so when we look at mold, and I think, I was just asked about some social media postings and what my opinion was on the way that they were addressing mold. And I said, yeah, I appreciate they're trying, but what they're not doing is cleaning the mold, removing the mold based on science, or what we know, what Normie knows, what you teach in the Normie courses. And wouldn't it be great if we could take that passion, that enthusiasm of the social media, the TikTok people, and actually give them a solution that's known to be proven by science to work, because they're trying to educate a greater audience, and they're doing their best, but not everything they're doing is 100% correct.
And unfortunately, some of the people putting information out there aren't putting out, if not all of the correct information, a slanted view of the information to make sales and for other reasons. And that's unfortunate.
It is, but it's what makes our industry so special, because we deal with passionate people. And when you have passionate, enthusiastic people, you have opinions. And unfortunately, some of those opinions, even in the year of 2024, are still, not just decades old, but centuries old. That's last year's that was the information we had in the 1800s. We don't do that now. We clean based on data, based on science, based on all those lessons learned, based on all the research and development that's gone into our industry. And we do it because this is what we know. This is what we know to do. And so important that as professionals, we translate and share that information. So those influencers out there are wonderful, but what we want them is to say, this is what works. Get everyone to do this.
Informed influencers are what we want.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And not somebody just because it's a hot topic, running with it, the shock jocks, as you would call them, from radio. It's really people that are informed, being the influencers for the right reason.
And that's a really good point, because mold can be everywhere.
Yep.
And it's not a disaster. It's not a catastrophe. It's not an emergency. It's giving the people the right knowledge, tools, and equipment to address mold themselves so they do it safely and they create safer indoor spaces for their families and their loved ones.
Absolutely. Well, I know I've been talking since about 8 o'clock this morning.
I
I think you have too.
I am just so impressed that here in Las Vegas, I had the experience that the level of energy is pretty high.
Oh, very
Um,
high.
The level of
Sure.
engagement and the level of sharing of information has been fantastic. Yeah, I don't think from probably 8 o'clock this morning till whatever time it is this afternoon, it's been constant conversation. It's been wonderful.
It is nonstop. I mean, we have a sign up board here for people that want to do interviews, and sometimes you run over a few minutes and they're waiting, tapping their foot, is it my turn yet? And we get there as fast as we can.
And I think that's what's so important, Normie, from an example of what Normie does as an organization, what ISSA does as an organization. We take these wonderful people and we try to form functional teams.